48 hours in Istanbul, Turkey. I had the pleasure of going on my first press trip with Intrepid Travel, which was actually 5 days in Turkey, but this video is summarizing your first 48 hours in Istanbul, what to do, where to stay, what to eat, where to go, and just how to enjoy yourself. At the airport, turns out the staff actually can't take pictures for you, so I had to put a timer on, and just because I wanted a picture of me with my luggage. And now here at check-in. Checked in, well, not checked in, yes, checked in, sorry. And also networked in the queue, which was nice. Met some great women who are also going to Turkey. Reminded them to go to the hammam spa experience and also to eat Turkish delight. But obviously there's lots more to the country, which hopefully this blog will cover. So I was going to Turkey on Turkish Airlines, which flies out from Terminal 2 in Heathrow. Unfortunately, my flight was on a weekday and I actually had work. So the first thing I did was go and check myself into the business lounge, which is about £35 all inclusive, so that I could have a seat and a desk and some Wi-Fi that really worked, because I was delivering a 3-hour workshop online before I could really put on my out of office and just enjoy the women's expedition with Intrepid. From London Heathrow to Istanbul, Turkey, it is just under a 4-hour flight. The flight itself was smooth, there was entertainment available, different food options, the customer service was good, and generally it's a nice way to set yourself up for a good trip, and especially when this one is all about adventure and traveling and really exploring different parts of Turkey. And so I felt like it really set me up for success. Four hours later, we have arrived in Turkey, Istanbul airport. The airport in first glance is clean and beautiful, but very big. So it took about 15 minutes to walk from the aeroplane to the first passport control office and then pick up your baggage. That whole process took about 45 minutes to an hour. Luckily, I met some of the great women that I'm actually going on the Intrepid expedition with in the queue, and so we just started connecting and conversing straight away. But a tiny lift. Reminds me of the lifts I used to have when I used to live in Italy before my study abroad. Quick shower as soon as we got into the hotel, and then I'm ready for dinner. Now this should be ironed, but there was no iron available, and I'm just hoping that the humidity will iron it out. I'm sure my family are going to be watching this very disappointed in me, but here we are. The hotel in which we stayed in was called No.11 Hotel and Apartments. It's female founded, focuses on sustainability, and is about 2 minutes from Istanbul's equivalent of Boxer Street, which made it super central.
Or like good morning in Turkish, or say bye-bye, because in some places you will need this. Most of the places we've been through, they can speak English, but still some people, they can't. So I'm going to show you at least to say hi in Turkish. It's merhaba. Merhaba. It's M-E-R-H-A-B-A. Merhaba. So let's say merhaba to our dinner place. She's an amazing woman, and our meal is ready, our food already. and let's drink rakı.
I'm definitely an explorer at heart, and so I love to just walk down random streets and not necessarily use Google Maps to get a sense of the culture, the vibe, what the locals are doing. And so even in this case, it was nice to have a quick tour of the streets of Istanbul before we went into our dinner restaurant, which is also female founded. Istanbul is generally open to quite late, and individuals have dinner around 7, 8, 9. You'll start with an appetizer, then go into your meze starters, have a main course, dessert, and some drinks at the end, which is quite interesting in itself and just means that you're there for a longer experience.
Mezes and one main dish. Could be fish or lamb or barbecues, but mostly in the restaurants you have lots of mezes and just fried calamari or shrimps or small fish from Marmara Sea. Yeah. That depends on your region. Now we are in Marmara region. So this region is all about the anchovies. And now is the season for the sea bass. Also you're gonna see bass and the mackerels.
Our first restaurant in Turkey, which we visited, was both a Michelin star and a meyhane. It has a fabulous story to it. It was female founded about 20 years ago and one of the first in Istanbul of its kind. I must say their vegetarian options were so good, and we had such filling starters that by the mains I was pretty stuffed. One thing that really interested me and was unexpected was the dessert, which was a beetroot sweetened with ice cream and walnuts. So I'm a big fan of trying funky desserts in every place I go, and so if you are in Istanbul and if you go to Sofyali, I would recommend really checking that out. Day 2, and given that you have such little time in Istanbul, you really want to make the most of your experience. I was out of my room by 7. I had my book in one hand, a cup of tea in the other, and down for breakfast. No.11 Hotel and Apartments have a female first kitchen, and they make everything from scratch. So fresh bread and sourdough. They grow their own fruit, vegetables, and herbs on their rooftop. Eggs, olives, paste, hummus, jam, honey, little biscuits, everything you can imagine. And then they had really delicious Turkish tea and Turkish coffee. With Turkish tea, I made the mistake of actually putting milk into it in the beginning, and then my tour guide at Intrepid actually mentioned that in Turkey you don't really drink milk with your tea. And so from then on, I consciously made an effort just to have Turkish tea without the milk so that I could both localize myself and experience the culture and immerse myself in different ways of drinking tea, because that's quite important for me, given that I not only love tea, but I have a talk show called Tea with Sonia.
It's one of the most famous regions in Istanbul. Old city is different, it's historical. But this part is modern, but at the same time very traditional. So we will walk from here all the way up, like roughly 10 minutes, and we will meet with the Women Supporters Corporation. And the president of the corporation, she will welcome us, and we will meet with her. And after that, she will explain everything about what are they doing there, what's their purpose, the mottos. And after this, we will drive with our woman driver. Some of you saw her, Fatma. She is ready to drive from here to Sultan Ahmet region, and when we go there, we're gonna visit Topkapi Palace. Today we will talk about harem life, the feminine life, the women's in Ottomans, and then we're gonna visit our Kurdish family. It's gonna be a lunchtime, and depends on the queue, how it's crowded. If it's less, we will visit Blue Mosque. If it's not, we are not able to see the Blue Mosque because we should come back here at 5 o'clock. Aisha is expecting us to see here, and we have a meeting and kind of, surprises.
Yes, and we have a small surprise for you.
Yeah. So this is why we should be here at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, we have 5 o'clock tea.
In the morning, we are going to visit the Foundation for the Support of Women's Work, which is an organisation based in Istanbul, supporting women in building their businesses, their brands, and gaining financial independence. Before we head to Topkapi Palace, where we're going to learn about the history of Turkey, especially through the Ottoman Empire and the lives of the sultans. We're then going to go to a local residence house for lunch before we head back to the hotel for afternoon tea and a evening out around town.
Myself and a group of my friends, we established this foundation. The aim was that to strengthen, to empower grassroots women, poor women, to be a role in the development, leadership role in the development, and also in the economy, to increase their participation in the economy of the country. So we started that way. We started opening our first work was just to open a poor area, women and child center.
So in Turkey, we have 81 provinces. From Black Sea to border of Armenia, Azerbaijan, Iraq, and our friends Iraq and Syrian border is all going through from this part, getting crazy. And this side we have more fantastic neighbors, Bulgaria, Romania, and Greece. Yeah. And from this side we have Cyprus, Lebanon, and all the Mediterranean Sea. So in Turkey, we are saying we are middle of everything. You know, the Europe, Middle East, or Black Sea, just middle of everything. It's just the same pure love. That's why we love to say Anatolia. And in Turkish way, we don't like to say we are from Central Asia, or we don't describe us as a Middle Easterns, or we don't see us only Europe, because we are all.
Next up on the tour is Topkapi Palace, Topkapi Palace. It is where the Sultan lived with his families. This palace today is now a museum and a library, so there is a fee of entry, but I definitely think it's worth it. You can spend about half a day here, and if you do, I recommend actually getting a guided tour. We were lucky that through Intrepid, we had a guided tour. So our guide was really able to give us information around the rooms, the history, the culture, the living standards, and the activities that went within the palace. One thing that I found really interesting was that Sultan was what we called the prince, but also Sultan was often what we called the mother of the prince. So most houses and most families were run by the grandmothers in their household. There were also women that would come and live with the sultans, hoping that they would birth boys. And the interesting fact there is that families would actively want their girls to go into the palace and to live this lifestyle because it was safer for them, and because they were able to access education, various other activities, and also be a part of a larger community that they may have not had when they were living in their villages or their towns otherwise. You can also see all the beautiful brickwork, the tiles, the gold, the colours, and they mentioned that the sultans back in the day used to actually go and create their own art. So they would have various walls or tiled walls where they would paint to relieve their stress, and there's a few rooms which you can see that have actually been decorated by the sultans themselves. These rooms, for example, are very much the rooms for the sultans and their friends, or the wider network, or government officials. Men stayed on one side, women stayed on the other side. So women had their own courtyard, they had their own rooms and bedrooms, they had their own space in which they could really just entertain themselves. And so there was a separation of that kind. And again, it was very much from what we understood about safety, about security, and just about making sure that things were done a particular way. So this area that you're seeing here is where the women and the girls stayed. The chosen ones, so the special ones, had their own bedrooms, which they didn't have to share. They were quite small, but they were still their own. So that was a perk of the role, let's say. And this outside area is one of the few spaces they had to actually be alone or independent in themselves. Much of that was because of security. And so it's just really interesting to see how individuals lived back in the day and how we live now, and honestly a lot of the things that we take for granted. These views are still from the palace. The palace has some great viewpoints for pictures, content, videos, whatever it might be. And given that you're spending about 500 Turkish liras, which is about £20 to get in there, it's probably worth really immersing yourself in the experience, getting a guide to take you on a tour, and just enjoying the moment. They do also have a cafe and restaurant inside in case you get a little bit peckish. As you leave the palace, you're able to go to the local mosques, the market, and the cafes. Unfortunately, the Blue Mosque was jam-packed and the line was extremely long, which meant that we would have been late for our late lunch with the woman who is a partner of Intrepid, which was great. So in that case, we decided to go straight to lunch. Given that I went on this trip with Intrepid, it was great to be able to walk around the streets and see everything from the old Ottoman wooden houses to experience a lunch in a local resident's house. It's something that they take quite seriously when it comes to helping the economy, especially the females. And so in this case, we were able to go into one of their partners' houses, have a homemade meal, which was so delicious, learn about different concepts like the Golden Day, where women come together, bring food, drink, and treats, and also contribute to one another's investment in gold. We learn about how the young generation are definitely more career and education driven, and how their parents are most definitely supporting them. And also, as a consequence of the earthquakes, yes, there's definitely been challenges, but one thing which was a running theme was that every challenge brings a new opportunity. So it's really about that blue sky thinking. Luckily, before we had to attend our Turkish tea time, we were able to go and visit the Blue Mosque, and I most definitely recommend this for everyone who is visiting Istanbul. 5 o'clock is tea time everywhere, or at least somewhere, and in Turkey it meant that we could go back to the hotel and experience local folk music and just take that moment of rest.
It was like a secret of music and the connections, even though I am not aware of it. It is always connecting people. So for me, it's a really holy window. And to be here with you, with the bridge of music, was an honor for me. Thank you again.
The streets are open until extremely late, midnight, 1 a.m. in Istanbul. And so before I went to the hammam experience, I had time to go and try the local treats, the baklava, the Turkish delight, even some stuffed mussels, which honestly, if you told me a few years ago I would be having stuffed mussels, I would have said absolutely no. But the benefit of traveling so much is that you really come out of your own comfort zone and that you test your limits and that you try new things. So these are just one of those. So when in Istanbul, please make sure that you check out the street markets and the local vendors and try everything from stuffed mussels to fried mussels. They have something called cockroach, which is lamb intestines. I did not try that, but many people did and found it very interesting. And before I went to bed, I was able to book in a hammam experience at 10 p.m. for 1 hour in a local spa, and I would highly recommend it. Last few hours in Istanbul, wake up early if you can. The sun rises at 6 a.m. and trust me, the shops are buzzing from then. I went on a walk in the morning before heading to Galata Tower as my last sight to see and grabbing a fresh pomegranate juice, which was most definitely the best €2 that I've ever spent.